In this video, I want to show you how to ride rock sections without falling down. 10 years ago, when I started riding out in the mountains, I was pretty intimidated of the rocks because they were exhausting. I didn't have control. I was getting bounced around. I'd stall, maybe even tip over. It's really frustrating. But after I learned the proper techniques and some of the mistakes that I was making, and I corrected them, I was able to have more confidence. And one of the first mistakes that's super easy to make is just looking down 5 feet in front of you. This is usually because you're focused on what you're riding over. You're worried that you might hit a big rock and you want to be looking at it, because if you're looking ahead, you're not going to see it and you might ride over it. But when you're just looking down, you're more likely to hit that big rock that you don't want to hit because you're focusing on it, or because you can't choose what the best line is. For my line selection, I like to choose the smoothest possible line, even if it's a little bit longer. So maybe it's on the side of the trail, kind of like the bank, where you got rocks all in the middle, and then you see one smooth spot which has the least amount of rocks, or it's the least bumpy. I will choose that because it's easier to go over. And if you are looking just down past your fender and you're not looking ahead 20 or 30 feet, you won't be able to tell and scan with your eyes which line is best, which means that you're going to hit that big rock that you don't want to hit, and you're going to get bounced around. You may even get hung up on it and stall and even tip over, which is really frustrating and exhausting because you got to pick the bike back up, start it up, and then try and build your momentum back up again. Mistake number 2 is being jerky with the throttle. This could be just giving it too big a throttle inputs, or it could just be from riding in the wrong gear. Generally a gear that's too low, where you're riding at high RPM. You have a lot of power there, but it makes the throttle very jerky, and when it's jerky, this is going to compress the suspension more, because when you give it gas, it rebounds the forks and compresses the rear shock, and then when you let off, it's going to rebound the shock and compress the forks, and this is going to make the bike bounce and dance all over the place a lot more. And when your suspension bounces a lot more, it's more likely to leave the ground. And once it leaves the ground, it can get kicked around a lot more. You're just more likely to lose your momentum or get bounced around on the rocks more. So either click up a gear or be smoother with the throttle. Being steady over the rocks makes the suspension more compliant so that it's not rocking back and forth as much. These are just some of the proper techniques that I cover in my basic techniques guide, which is a free PDF. You can download it in the description below. Mistake number 3 is sitting too far back on the bike. You might think that, oh, I need to keep the front end loose so that it doesn't get bounced around or compressed too much and you fly over the bars. Whatever it is, if you're sitting too far back, the front end is going to be too light, which is going to make it bounce and dance around. It's going to have a mind of its own, making it more likely to fly off the trail, or the front end just to slide out and you to fall on the ground. So if you do need to get your weight back, you need to shift it with your hips and not your whole body like this, because you can shift your hips back and still keep your head forward. You're not bending your knees much, you're just moving back and forth with your hips. And this will get a little bit of weight back, but you still have a balanced body position so that the front forks and rear suspension are balanced and they'll both be very stable and not get bounced around back and forth. Mistake number 4 causes you to have a lot less control, and it'll get exhausted a lot quicker when riding in the rocks. And this is when you're paddling with your feet, where you take your feet off the pegs and you start walking or paddling or stepping with your feet on the ground, to whether it's to keep the bike going or that so you don't tip over. When you do that, you lose most of the control of your bike because your feet aren't on the pegs. And when your feet aren't on the pegs, the seat can just bounce your butt and your body up, which means that the bike is controlling you and you're not controlling the bike, because you're going for a ride getting bounced around. And when you are trying to paddle with your feet, it takes a lot more energy to try and push and balance, because you're using a lot more of your core and leg muscles. Yes, it does take more skill and balance to stand on the pegs while you're riding rocks, but if you learn how to do that, it's going to be a lot easier to stay in control and use less energy. And if you want to learn how to become a confident trail rider without taking years to learn how to do it, you should check out this video here. I'm Kelly Fagan from MXHideout. Ride safe, have fun.